Hi, Misha here. Felt like doing another black box video. Actually was doing some model videos and some videos for the main channel, and kind of just felt like doing this. Haven't done one in a while. And as the title kind of indicates, this is going to be, at this point, a 5-part series where I talk about what I enjoy and what annoys me. So, joy and annoy from each of the Star Trek series. If you can't tell by my Eagle Moss reviews, I am a Star Trek fan and have been since, I wouldn't say a small kid. When I was very little, I liked Star Wars. As I got a little older, more mature, Star Trek made a lot more sense to me. It never was bad. I just, a lot of the nuances get lost. And to be fair, when I was little, we didn't have shows like Deep Space Nine. We had the original series, the animated series, and the first season of The Next Generation. So you can understand why maybe I wasn't 100% on board at first. That plus, again, being younger. So yeah, that I just carry you around with me, talk a bit. In this one, we're going to look at, of course, the original series, the classic, the one, the only. I think the best thing that summarizes it is from Futurama, when Fry says, 79 episodes, about 30 good ones. And I would say that's a very, very astute observation, especially for Fry when it comes to TOS, as it's now known. People like to remember all the good episodes, the classics like Balance of Terror. But there are a lot I think they either never have seen or tune out. Because when I was getting into it, you watched it on TV. It wasn't, streaming or even DVD where you could pick your favorites. So I'd tune in on a Sunday night sometimes and it'd be good. Other times you would get Turnabout Intruder. Now, I'm not old enough to have seen it when it originally aired. The first episode that aired was on September 8th, 1966. And the last episode aired on June 3rd, 1969. I think it's kind of interesting that Star Trek went off the air right before the first moon landing. Almost feels like mission accomplished, so they just left. But I digress. So, I don't normally have notes or anything when I do these videos, but I put up a list of episodes, because a lot of the times I don't know the names, especially of a lot of later ones. I just know that was that episode that happened in. So I thought I'd kind of go over him here and talk about, good or bad. So, obviously, the first one is the unaired pilot, The Cage, which, would later be The Menagerie, Part 1 and 2. And what do you think about this? I enjoyed it. Now, being blind, I like the fact that it was very dialogue-heavy, very cerebral. But I can understand it wasn't exactly action-packed, if you know what I mean. And, of course, it's a pilot made in 64, so it's almost like something I want to give a pass to. But honestly, I enjoyed it, and I think it showed what Star Trek could be. And of course, next we have the second pilot, although it wasn't the first episode to air, Where No Man Has Gone Before. I remember seeing that, definitely more action-driven, but I also enjoyed it. It had that cerebral element, had a bit of mystery, it had a good build-up, it had that friends turned enemies. Yeah, it was good. Obviously, I really can't comment on special effects, things of that nature, sorry. But I would also say I chunked this one into the enjoy. Like I said, I'm kind of scrolling through here. You ever notice how Wikipedia just kind of rambles? What about just a good old-fashioned list, you know? Obviously, the man trap was the first one to go on the air. And I find it very forgettable. I know that the monster is kind of the lure, but to me, that didn't do much. So I've watched it several times. It doesn't stick with me. I think it was a weak one to start with on NBC way back then. Yeah. And it didn't do a lot of world building. It was very claustrophobic for a first episode. Charlie X, I think, was a little better. It at least showed, especially in TOS Remastered, another starship, the concept of colonies and other ships in space, and of course it's the old absolute power. And I like that the villain isn't villainous. That said, some of the dialogue is really, well, 1960s influenced by the Batman campiness dialogue, and the quote-unquote romance is odd, to say the least. A little bit cringy by modern standards. Yeah, very, very 60s. Let's see. And then they would air Where No Man Has Gone Before as episode 3. That really should have been the pilot because it took place a year earlier. It took place in 2265. But that does show you something about the series. This was meant for syndication. This was meant for... Each episode was extremely self-contained. There were very few references to previous episodes, even characters. It was how TV shows were written back then. The Naked Time, much like the Naked Now, we'll get to in the next generation. Blah, blah. It's entertaining. It's fun. I just think it would have been much better towards the end of the season. We don't know these characters well. It's kind of odd to see Kirk so vulnerable so early on. I'm told, I think Sulu goes without a shirt. I know he has a sword in it. It's a rapier. That's cool. They didn't go samurai. I think that was George Takei's thing. But it was entertaining. But talking about canon, the whole backward warp thing, you know, going literally reverse warp, reverse time. You know, people talk about Discovery and newer series breaking canon. What about that? And one thing that did bug me even when I first saw it, okay, they didn't care much about that part because I was a kid, but I thought, wait, if they went back in time and saved themselves, if they went back several days, the crew, the research outpost members, they're probably still alive. You can go rescue them and give them the treatment. But they just merrily go along about their way in the galaxy. And, yeah, that's kind of Kirk's MO. And it's kind of funny, the next one, the Enemy Within, is almost the same thing. One thing about it, there's no shuttle bay. Like, they act like the transporter is the only way on and off the ship. That annoyed me even then, because there is a shuttle bay clearly at the back of the model of the Enterprise. Okay, I get it. They didn't have a model for the shuttle that early. But they could have made some excuse like, oh, the atmosphere has something in it, we can't use the shuttles, or, oh, it's a shame the shuttles haven't arrived and they won't be here till Tuesday. And then there's the whole, basically, rape scene in it. Yeah, I definitely think this is one of the weakest ones early on. Although I did like the surviving down on the planet using phasers and whatnot. But that one had some things that really kind of annoyed me, and I always have. Okay, next, Mudd's Women. That's one of the first episodes I saw, maybe like number 3 or 4. Again, I didn't watch them necessarily in order. How can you not like Harcourt Fenton Mudd? It's just a great con artist and whatnot. Just a great episode, and why not? I enjoyed it. It's seeing episodes like this so early on that kept me interested. Obviously, the women didn't do a whole lot for me, although I do like a good voice. Next, we have What Are Little Girls Made Of? Honestly, I'd have to go back and read a synopsis even to remember which one that was. So that should tell you something. The title is, I'm sure, you could see this title on just a modern. And next, we have everyone's favorite, Myri or Miri. Again, we've kind of got some weird underage thing going on. Although Kirk isn't necessarily the aggressor, he does play it. Okie dokie. Not to mention some of the dialogue is weird, and yeah, this is not... I'll put it like this. If a newer series like Enterprise or Discovery had done this, people would tear it to shreds today. Dagger of the Mind. I need to go back and watch this one again. It's one I haven't seen in a while. I haven't actually seen the series in a while. But back in the 80s, I watched them quite a bit. I did like the Shakespearean aspect. But this starts a trend of people from the crew's past basically losing their marbles. Also, kind of the mentor or admiral being nutty, which we see throughout all of Star Trek. Next, one of my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes, I even made a Eagle Moss video, the Corbinite maneuver. Corbinite, I can't talk, sorry, long day. Everything about this I like. The racism, scaredy cat plot was a little bit heavy-handed, but the resolution was just pure Star Trek. What else can you say about it, And then we get into the two-part menagerie, which is, hey, good on them for using the original pilot. Again, I liked it. It was cool to see Pike and Spock not just showing loyalty to Kirk alone, but showing that Spock is just a loyal person. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And this episode clearly proves that the Class F shuttle has warp. So, yeah. Yep. I think so this doesn't go on too long. I'll kind of fast forward a bit now that we've made it through half of the first season, and I hope I've kind of proven my point a wee bit. Episode 14, Balance of Terror, was actually one I sought out on VHS. Back then you could get an episode on VHS, and they had the whole series, but you had to basically buy one at a time. It was kind of weird. I think they might have done sometimes a double, but I remember this one was just by itself. I bought it in an old department store. I'm trying to think which one it was. They're out of, I don't know, was it a Woolworths? Anyway, whatever. Balance of Terror, you know it, you love it. I mean, it's one of the closest to flawless episodes. And if the Corbinite maneuver had a little bit of cowardice and kind of, I guess racism wasn't the right word, but xenophobia, this one is true overt racism. But again, it's handled well. A little on the nose, a little too abrupt, but that was the way things were written in the 60s. That said, again, if it was in a modern series, it definitely doesn't have as much subtlety, but just a great episode. Now, it's interesting here, talking about continuity, that the battle takes place kind of at warp. At least they say full reverse warp, blah, blah, blah. But then they say, and this is another one, they say, oh, Scotty says pure impulse for the Romulan. At the very worst, this is just a speako, a misplaced piece of dialogue. Or he could just mean when they're cloaked. And this is what I always thought it meant. When they're cloaked, they can only travel at warp. And when they're uncloaked, they can warp. Because the Romulan ship clearly has nacelles. And kind of that submarine analogy. A sub, an old diesel sub, can go at full speed on diesel engines and at the surface. But when submerged, it goes much slower using electric batteries. And that was the analogy they were going for. So I absolutely do not buy that the Romulan bird of prey does not have warp, and I don't think they intended that, but that kind of shows you have fans. So one little piece of dialogue, but yeah. It's also interesting that what they call phasers in this episode really seem to be photon torpedoes. But again, no one complains, but yeah, but it was one of the first true space battles. The Corbomite maneuver was more of a standoff. This was a true battle. And what I liked is that the enemy wasn't a villain. It was very much like a Soviet or whatever. There was respect on both sides. I could go on all day. Great episode. Don't really have much bad to say about it. After it, we go from very serious to kind of goofy but fun. We have Shore Leave. Yeah, it's that weird kind of alien planet thing, but enjoyable. Why not? Next, we have another trope that gets into Star Trek, the Galileo 7, episode 16. Crash shuttles. That's what shuttles do. If you're getting on a shuttle, just pack a, warm pair of pants and a sleeping bag and some MREs, because you are going to crash. And there will be hostile natives or something else. Yeah. Yep. But, hey, we have a shuttle. That's cool. Correcting one of the earlier issues. Next is kind of another favorite, Arena. Very classic Star Trek episode. Kirk gets a little something, and Chekhov. Was there Chekhov's in this one? No, I guess he wouldn't have been. Yeah. No, sorry, I'm thinking of the one with the Tronars. But yeah, the introducing the Gorn, just the whole thing, and for TOS-R, they did give a Gorn ship, which is nice. I have the Eagle Moss model of it. Cool ship, very different. Yeah, a good, solid, very classic episode. I hear the Gorn suit was a little but whatever. I think this is classic Trek being at its most classic and one of its best. I actually like, and you don't hear it talked about a lot, Return of the Archons. It again is starting a widespread trope of a computer out of control technology, a population that's kind of infantile, and at the end they'll help them civilize and whatnot, plus the whole madness thing. I just thought it was worth noting. Of course, 22 in the season, episode 20, Space Seed, I mean, what can you say? Even the romance plot is a little weird. I think it's strange that a Starfleet officer would so easily betray her oath just for a man. I get attraction. At least the two had chemistry, but it seems odd that a lieutenant... I think they should have just made her a civilian attaché, a civilian member. If she wasn't a ranked Starfleet officer, I think that would have been... But everything else about it, I like the DY-100, I like the whole history base. Ricardo Montalban, I think with his performance as Khan, just retire. It's like retiring a jersey in sports. Just no one should do that role. Make it Khan's son or dad or brother, fine, but it's just, how do you do that? Well, how do you do it well? Yeah, we've seen how it's done. But even then, there's a couple of nitpicks. For example, why is there gravity on the DY-100? Of course, the obvious answer is they didn't have the budget to simulate weightlessness. And the way the ship can so easily be self-destructed, that could be criticized. But that's just, yeah. Otherwise... Next, we have A Taste of Armageddon. I just thought I would mention it here. It's an episode I like, not as good as Space Seed. This side of Paradise had some highs, but had some lows. They really like putting Spock, who's supposed to be no expressive emotions, in a situation where he's emotional. Probably a little more than they should, but Episode 25, getting towards the end of the season, The Devil in the Dark, is again one of the best Star Trek ever did, and well acted. And I love the resolution where there's no enemies. I mean, if anything, the humans are the kind of the bad guys, but it was unintentional, and I love the cooperation. Just Trek at its best. Plus, we get to see another outpost, which I always enjoy, world building and whatnot. I think Errand of Mercy is another one worth noting. Yeah. Of course, 28, City on the Edge of Forever, classic. Not as Star Trek. As a kid, it was a little bit to me, because it didn't mostly take place in the future, plus the romance. Not saying it's bad, but yeah. But as an adult, it's a much more adult story. It's not so much a Star Trek story, but it's a good story. Any time travel thing could do just fine. Plus, you know, we get the space Nazis, at least inferred. And this is interesting, you know, the last episode of the season, episode 29, shows you just how many, you know, episodes they filmed in a year back then. Operation Annihilate. Hate the title. And this is one I've mentioned before. They, in that episode, refer to a path that this entity has carved through the galaxy. Like, as if they transverse the entire galaxy. And since this was the first series, you can say that. But, of course, in later Star Trek, we lower that to quadrant. And throughout the original series, you see them mix up terms like solar system, galaxy, universe, etc., etc., etc. That's the thing, and there's definitely some overacting going on. I wish there had been more continuity with Kirk's family. I like when they bring family in, because we mostly all have families to some extent, and it would have been nice to see Kirk's nephew appear later or be referenced later. I think there was a fan film where he was in it, and you know, I like that. I like seeing that building. Maybe definitely not the strongest end of season on, but not the weakest. It seems like towards the end of the season they were doing better. It's worth pointing out, according to Wikipedia, that they were given an average budget of $190,000 per episode, which roughly translates to about $1.5 million in 2020. So, pretty good budget, honestly, guys. Pretty good budget. And that would close out in 1967. How would Season 2 do? Season 2, speaking of budget, it was slightly decreased per episode, down to about $185,000. At the same time, they hired a new actor, Walter Koenig, to play Chekhov, so that took money. And, of course, the lead actors were, you know, wanting salary increases. So costs were up and budget was down. But they started off strong. The first episode, Amok Time. Another classic. Another time Spock has emotions. But this one is well explained and kind of lets us know how Vulcans exist as a race. Because otherwise it doesn't seem like they're very interested in sex. But, you know, we get T'Pau in this, or T'Pau, I guess is how they say it, T'Pau, and we look at Vulcan, and the Vulcan culture, and, again, at the end of the episode, when Spock shows emotion at Jim's being alive, that's justified. That was great. And the fact that it happened in front of McCoy, very genuine. And that's one of the first times the triad there really felt welded together. And also, this is the episode that introduces Chekhov. The next one, Who Mourns for Adonis? It's one of it's very much a trope today, but back then not so much, as the Greek gods were aliens. Interesting enough. Not bad. Interesting sci-fi concept. Next one I put down is episode 4, Mirror Mirror. I mean, who doesn't love the Terran Empire, the Mirror Universe? I mean, yeah, plus the characters get to act scummy and slutty and all kinds of good fun stuff. So, I think it's definitely Star Trek, and I kind of wish the mirror universe was used more. Less in Deep Space Nine, honestly, but more in Next Generation. I think a little more balanced, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Next, we have the Apple. Moving on. Now we have actually a good one, the Doomsday Machine. Aside from some hammy but enjoyable overacting, again, pure Star Trek, and again, another true space battle. And again, we have the mentor, the high-ranking officer, losing his marbles. Although, if your entire crew, I'm sure many of which you cared for deeply, all died, that would push anyone over the edge. So it's justifiable, but there is that. And, yeah, aside from his irrational behavior, maybe being a little too quirky, but that shows you this show was kind of directed to be more of a theatrical type thing than a true, television show of today's standards. And we have one of the few reoccurring characters here with Mudd, Harry Mudd coming back. Again, they don't reference it, but then we have this whole Planet of Androids. It's a fun episode. Just don't think about it too much because it'll break your brain. Yeah. Yep. Fun episode, and the ending is great with his wife, Robot. But definitely not one you want to think too deep on. So if it was made today, it'd probably get criticized for that. Next, not a great episode, but great for world building, lore building, metamorphosis. This is where we get Zephyr Cochrane, inventor of the warp drive, although at this point he's said to be from Alpha Centauri. I get why later they would move him to being an Earthling, because even at close to light speed getting to Alpha Centauri, it'd be hard to have a colony off of Earth without at least Warp 1. Made sense. Yeah, not a bad episode. Another crash shuttle trope. And of course, someone's injured, and if they don't get them off soon, yada yada. Again, shuttles have warp drive. They really have to. Otherwise, the Enterprise would have noticed it. Next, we have another really good one. One of my favorites, Journey to Babel, where the Romulan commander returns, but this time as Sarek, Spock's father, who will reoccur, of course, in the movies. Also has the Orion intruder in it, and Spock's conflict of duty. See, that was a good Spock emotional episode, in the way he maintained control and the way his father respected him. I don't have a lot negative to say. I like the peace conference. I like that there are several aliens. I always loved the Andorians. Glad Enterprise brought them back. That was, again, Star Trek, top of its game. I really don't have much. It was just an enjoyable episode. But then, after it, we get Friday's Child. Why is... Well, no. The only good thing is we had some Klingons. Klingons are always good. Of course, Klingons back then were very different. Not just the forehead, but the whole attitude. But I don't need a McCoy love baby. No. Obviously, the Prime Directive isn't in force here for whatever weird reason. Again, canon? I don't know. Whatever. I'm moving on. Next, again, we have what I consider to be a bit of a clunker, The Deadly Years. I guess maybe it's about modern, the whole sped up aging thing. I don't like that nick of the time clock medical crap. And again, we have another kind of crazy high-ranking person taking charge of the Enterprise, that trope. The only thing I really liked about it, hey, we get the Romulan bird of prey back. Yeah, I know it was reused footage from Balance of Terror, but at least it's a ship showing up again. Although the Enterprise sure takes a shitload of plasma torpedo hits this time, whereas before, one nearly destroyed it. So, continuity, guys? Come on. I'm just trying to be honest here, give a fair assessment. But, not really. Nah. But then, a couple episodes later, we get a classic, The Trouble with Tribbles. Made even better by Deep Space Nine's foray into that later. But this one here, we see a space station. First one we get to see on screen, I believe. And Klingons again, but in a much more nuanced role. Enjoyable. Yeah, just a good role. Back to the top of its game. Another good one, although not quite as good, The Gamesters of Tristan. Hey, Chekhov gets some action. Apparently he likes them very Amazonian. Hammy Kirk dialogue, but at least the woman he's seducing is over 18, so good on him. Also, South Park parodied it, so that was neat. Good, not great, but a good episode. Next, episode 17, A Piece of the Action. This is the mobsters in the 1930s in a shockingly Earth-like planet, which is starting to get a little familiar here. It's almost like they're trying to save money by using existing sets, but I'm sure it couldn't be that. Also, one of my neighbors back in college when I was a sophomore, this was one of his favorite episodes. Not that he'll ever hear this, but hey, Charlie, if you're out there, contact me. I'd like to see how you're doing. It's been 20 years. But, yeah. It was a fun episode, especially when Kirk hams it up. And I like the resolution and how, at the end, McCoy leaves his communicator, I believe it's behind. This would have been one to revisit later. I don't know. It's a fun episode. So, yeah. Why not? And a classic. Everyone thinks of this one. Skipping ahead a bit, we have the Omega Glory. And not the Omega Particle from Voyager, but this is something totally different. Yeah, another Constitution class gets wiped out. What happened? We go down. There's another high-ranking officer, a captain, who's, again, lost his marbles. And in the end, we find out it's was at least one time, Earth-like planet, but the Cold War went hot, and yada yada. Kind of a neat reveal at the end, and the scene of Kirk reading the Constitution is kind of funny, considering he's Canadian. But, again, the whole Earth-like planet thing is getting a little worn thin. It's almost as if their budget was running out towards the end. What do you think? But then we have episode 24, The Ultimate Computer, with Daystrom. And this was actually the biggest fleet battle in Star Trek for a long time, with several Constitution classes, also one of the biggest losses we see. Cool. I like this episode. It is neat to see technology in this argument, but the idea that humans will be completely obsolete, well, drones, but... yeah, a fun episode, a good episode, a thought-provoking episode. It's nice to have a good one again. And then, guess what we have again? Bread and circuses. Guess what this is? Another alternative Earth, where Christianity didn't take hold in the Roman Empire like it did, but now it's taking hold 2,000 years later, or whatever the hell. They're Romans in space. Again... it's almost as if they had a set and props and costumes for a Roman film or TV show, and they used them again. Yay. I think on episode 26, the final one, Assignment Earth, they just gave up. They just put it on Earth. And not interesting like 23rd century Earth where we could see a future... No, 1960s Earth. Because that's cheap to film. This might have been the final episode of the series, too. They were trying to make this into kind of a spin-off pilot, as everyone knows, for the whole Gary 7 series, which never took hold. Gary Seven's fine, I suppose. Interesting of character. I wouldn't mind seeing him be reoccurring. There's a cat in it that also turns into a pretty woman, so I like both of those things. That's cool. But that's about it. Yeah, missile test, blah blah. Pretty forgettable. You can tell it was a failed pilot because it doesn't really focus on the Enterprise crew at all. Also, this is the one and only time I can think of where they're just like, hey, we're bored. It's Wednesday, hump day. What do you want to do? Yeah, let's travel back in time a few hundred years and fuck around in the past. Mr. Spock, set your calculations for time travel. Every other time they do time travel, it's either accidental or a big deal. This time, it's just like they got bored. Yeah, pretty lazy episode. Again, if this had been in a modern script, people would have been rightfully critical, because it is kind of BS. But what can you do? It was 1968. Want to know something funny? When I had the idea for this video at lunch, yeah, this isn't rehearsed or anything, I just thought it'd be fun. Oh, I thought it'd be 10 or 15 minutes. Haha. So forgive me if I start to kind of rush through season 3, which, to be fair, has a lot of forgettable episodes, so I think it's okay. And I would say any person who's into the Star Trek lore at all knows that they wanted to cancel. Like I said, they brought it back because of a writing campaign. But you could tell they were just looking. I think it was just throwing the fans a bone. So they cut the budget to $175,000 per episode and reduced it from, well, it was 29 in season 1, then 26, now 24 episodes in season 3. So, and if that's not enough, episode 1 is Spock's brain. I bet there are entire websites devoted to this one. It's definitely in the so bad it's kind of good category. Plus penis starship and women. I remember the episode fine. But what I really remember is that one episode of The Wonder Years where they parodied it. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. Brain. I definitely like the women when they are intelligent more than bratty children, and the cavemen outside are just, again, it's the whole juvenile civilization controlled by a computer overseer that's turned out. It's basically the old Exit from Eden trope. Oh, why? Nothing in this episode should be considered canon. The ion drive, the tech, it's only funny because it's almost a parody in and of itself, and this is what they decided to launch season 3 with, which probably had a lot of people cringing. But then they follow that up, episode 2, with the Enterprise incident. Why in the world this was not the first one, I don't know. Not just one of the best episodes of this season, but one of the best episodes in the original series. I like Romulans, so I'm always going to do that. Funny thing about them using the D7 from the Klingons, but yeah, at least they explain it, so good on them. Why not? A female Romulan commander, that's very good, and they didn't make a big deal. Oh, it's a woman. No, it's just, it's a woman. She commands not just one ship, but 3. So she was probably, her rank as commander, but more like Commodore, you would think. And her seduction of Spock's seduction of her, very, very believable. I thought those two had good chemistry. I would have liked to have seen that character come back. Of course, the Vulcan death grip comes from this episode. A classic. Yeah, just fun, and Kirk's weird behavior becomes totally justified. I have only one kind of minor complaint. In Balance of Terror, they encounter the cloak. In this episode, when you hear them talking about Romulans developing a cloak, they act like this is the first time Romulans are developing a cloak. So they act like they've never seen a Romulan cloak before. Now I know fans have kind of retconned this and that, but it goes to show you just how serialized, how episodic, non-arc driven it was. Also the fact that they just tie it into the Enterprise and blink, it's out of existence. But, oh well, you know, it was kind of the MacGuffin of the day. And at least Romulan cloak, yeah. Episode 4, The Children Shall Leave. Yes, I know lead, but I'm leaving. I don't, no, I don't like children episodes. Fuck off. Episode 7, though, I'd like. Day of the Dove. Another good Klingon episode, and again, I like that it kind of forced the Klingon and humans to cooperate. And it was kind of cool seeing all their modern weapons turned into swords and stuff, and being shot out into the void, and yeah, finding the true enemy. Kind of reminded me of the Season 3 arc and Enterprise, frankly. But no, I really like this one. And this might be the first time we see a female Klingon. Yeah, I don't know. I like any time the Klingons and Romulans show up. Next episode is For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, yada yada. Way too long of a title. Not a horrible episode, but I will say that Orville did it better. But after it, we get episode 9, The Tholian Web. Another great episode, and not just for the Tholians and the weird disappearing starship, but also the Kirk, Spock, McCoy triad. And I like how Kirk leaves a message for Spock and McCoy. They read it, watch it rather, but then they tell him that they didn't. Hey, Spock lied. But yeah, Tholians are cool. What's really neat, it's a non-humanoid race. Don't get enough of those. They even got their own ship. I know it's not a complicated model, but hey, they got something, right? So, could be worse. Could be worse. And the one after it, Plato's Stepchildren. Cool concept. A little odd in the execution at times, but a very solid sci-fi concept. At least we're getting, this definitely harkens back to Earth history, kind of like the Who Mourns for Adonis a little bit episode, but at least they're getting away from the mirror, parallel, alternative Earth thing, somewhat. Episode 15, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Very classic, very poignant discussion about racism and xenophobia and just anything ridiculous with prejudice involved, and just a classic episode of Star Trek in general. I have to wonder if it's episodes like this that kept Nichelle Nichols from quitting. I know that there's the whole Martin Luther King thing, but I don't know. And a very sad ending, very, very sad, but poignant. Episode 20, The Way to Eden. Why? Gross. Just gross. No one needs this. This is not canon. This should not be canon. This is one of those, say, dozen or so episodes where people talk about how great they're just point out this one amongst others. Wait, never mind. Episode 24, Turnabout Intruder. There you go. That might be the number one episode. It's stupid. And it's the series finale. Even asking why is pointless. People have done it before. First, why can a woman not command a starship? And this comes out of nowhere. When we're showed that women, so what, Uhura knows that she'll never get command. Every woman that we see in Starfleet for the last 3 years knows that they have to stop at Commander. Bullshit. This is one thing that got retconned in Enterprise that really I'm glad, because we see the second NX class, the NX-02 Columbia, commanded by a woman. I mean, you're talking for 3 years about a progressive society, sexism, racism gone, and then you say this. But not just that, but the woman herself is nutty and stupid, her/Kirk acts, and then that bizarre sexual scene between the woman with Kirk inside her. That sounded dirty. Wanting Spock to probe her. Yeah, that was intentional there. It's just, it's all kinds of wrong. People talk about Threshold from Voyager being bad. Hell, I'll take Threshold over this shit. No wonder the series got canned. I mean, I know it was already over by the time this, but still. Ugh. I don't understand it. It's just crap. I knew it was crap when I was a kid. I think it's crap now. And there you go. Much longer than I intended. I noticed that when I go through the episodes, I tend to pick the ones I like out and just pass over the ones that didn't make an impact, or the ones I don't like. I think most people do that. Like I said at the beginning of this video, yeah, as Fry said, 79 episodes, about 30 good ones. That seems about right. Little less than half. Well, I guess a little less or a little more than a third. Somewhere between less than a half, more than a third. Were good. Some of them were excellent. Many set trends. But I think the reason this gets so much acclaim is because people grew up with it. It's part of people's childhood. I could tell you stories. I remember the first time I watched this episode or that episode, even sometimes what I was eating, what I was doing. But you have to understand that doesn't necessarily make something objectively good. I'm not saying it's bad either, but people look back at TOS with very much rose-tinted glasses. I just think they need to be realistic about what it does well and what it's a little falling down on. And of course, a lot of later Star Trek has helped correct its issues. A lot of its tech issues, of course, are dated, and a lot of its space travel stuff is dated. Even some of its social commentary is dated by today's standards. One thing I will say from a historian's point of view, people think that, because the women were wearing miniskirts and sometimes not much other clothing, that this was sexist in the 60s. No, it wasn't. Back in the 50s, women were told by men they had to cover up. Quite a few women in the 60s wanted to wear, let's say, comfortable and less restrictive clothing. So it was actually a statement of femininity and feminism. It's just men got some benefits, and other women too. So I have no problem with that if the women were comfortable wearing those costumes. If they weren't, then let them dress whatever. But yeah, it's not exploitation if they themselves feel it is a statement. And there are things like that by today's standards we view as outdated, but if you look at it by the standards of the time, were really progressive. I do like a lot of the Shakespeare, a lot of the poetry in it, a lot of the historical references, even quotes and things. That's very enjoyable. The cast was solid. Again, the looks, the sets, those don't impact me, so I won't talk about that. The Enterprise itself, great design. All in all, a good series. But I'll say this. It wasn't really a cultural phenomenon. If Star Trek had stopped in 1969, I don't think it'd be a cultural phenomenon. It'd be like Batman, the Adam West, or Buck Rogers or Battlestar Galactica. It would definitely be popular, but it would be kind of a thing. It wouldn't be rivaling Star Wars. No, it's later series that put it on that pedestal, like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and yes, even Voyager. And that's what I'll cover in my next and my shorter videos. But, you know, it's a Saturday, wife's at work, had fun doing this, hope you had fun hanging out with me. I'd like to hear your favorite and least favorite episodes and what you think, and just a candid discussion. And the reason I didn't put love and hate in the title, by the way, fictional entertainment doesn't inspire such strong emotions in me. Sorry, I either enjoy it or get annoyed by it. If something annoys me enough, I quit watching it. If something gives me a lot of joy, then I'll make sure to watch it ASAP. But love, hate, truly getting outraged, fuck that. Life's too short. If you have those emotions, save them for things that are really important, like the political situation, whichever side you're on. That's true life and death. Our families, our loved ones, those are what are important. Entertainment is what it is. With that said, I guess I'm going to go see what I can wrestle up for dinner. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.